pop culture podcast, where we talk about how medieval and medieval-inspired movies, TV, and books depict the medieval world. What did they get right? What did they get wrong? And what do they tell us about how modern people see the medieval past? I'm Sarah Ifft, a medieval historian, and today I'm joined by guest Sarah Baggs to talk about the 1996 Disney film, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. So, Sarah, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. Would you like to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Oh, boy. I forgot that you were going to ask me that. So my name's Sarah. I am Australian. I live in Melbourne in Australia. I'm a podcaster. I'm a bit of an artist and a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none with my art. I like to dabble in many areas, and I really like Disney movies, which is why I jumped at the chance to do The Hunchback of Notre Dame, because it's a weird one in the Disney canon. A lot to say.
It is. Did you have much of a relationship with this movie? Because this is definitely one of the ones that I feel like came out at like the tail end of like, I guess when I was old enough that I wasn't like that into Disney, but not so old that I was like around the other way and super nostalgic about Disney.
I was only 9 when this came out. I definitely remember seeing it, and I remember a lot of the merchandise around it, which once you've seen the movie is so strange. It's not a movie that lends itself easily to the fun merchandising side of the Disney movies. But it definitely wasn't one of my favorites because it's really not a kids movie, I feel.
No,
it's neither one nor the other. They really couldn't work out what they wanted to do with this movie.
Right, and it's sort of an odd choice to take a like extremely depressing gothic novel and turn that into something that's supposed to be a children's movie.
The reason that they made it after, they were having sort of this Disney renaissance was because, what was his name? I think Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was the head of Disney Animation at the time, he wanted more prestige films. He wanted Oscars, basically, after the success of Beauty and the Beast, which was the first animated film to win an Oscar for Best Picture, I think. Or nominated,
right.
no, but first nominated for Best Picture, which is why I think they came up with the animation category in its own right, because they didn't want animated films stealing spotlight from the prestige film. But basically, Jeffrey Katzenberg wanted a prestige film, and that's the reason that they made this, for the potential for Oscars, and also because Disney was very aware of the potential to move prestige films to the stage for musicals, and they wanted to do that as well. So that's a little Disney history for you. My husband is a Disney freak, so I do pick up a lot about Disney from him. He's looking at me accusingly like he's not a Disney freak. Sorry, you are.
Yeah, I'm actually a big like Victor Hugo fan because I don't know, I guess in high school, early college, something, I went to France and was like that asshole and like read a lot of unabridged Victor Hugo.
You must have had a lot of time. So much time.
Right. Those were the days.
Yeah, I've read The Hunchback of Notre Dame like a long time ago, because when I was in my teens, I was very much like I'm not like other girls. I love classic literature,
I had to follow that too.
And I was, when you said we were going to read this, I was like, oh, maybe I should read it again and just like refresh my memory. And I looked on Audible and I was like, 23 hours, fuck that.
Yeah.
So fuck that noise. I was like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, this was one of my favorite novels for a long time, but it's been a few years now since I've reread it. So my memory of everything in it is definitely not perfect, although it's good enough to remark on several things that I don't think they should have changed.
Yeah.
So, which we'll get to.
For sure.
The Hunchback of Notre Dame is, of course, based on the 1831 novel by Victor Hugo. It stars Tom Hulce as Quasimodo, who is better known, I guess, as Amadeus, the titular Amadeus. To be more as Esmeralda, which is
a choice
that they have this very white actress playing this character who is portrayed as being a woman of color. And Tony J as Claude Frollo, who apparently his big thing is that he's just known for having a villain voice.
Well, he voiced Shere Khan in The Jungle Book.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got that iconic. I love his voice, actually. I really do.
Yeah, I love his voice. And I will say, I mean, in general, I tend to think Disney villain songs are often the best songs. And I think that is the case in this movie as well.
Yes, it is. It is so good. I actually, I watched Hunchback last night in preparation, and I was thinking about how much I love villain songs. And yeah, Hellfire is one of the best. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yes. And then Kevin Kline as Captain Phoebus.
Again, a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin Kline is famous for not doing movies. He will be asked to do movies, and he's very, very picky about what movies he will do and won't do. So getting Kevin Kline, it was a bit of a get for Disney, but I just don't like him in this. I don't like him.
Yeah.
I'm not into it. I can't think of an actor that I would prefer to Kevin Kline. I just know that I don't like him. And it's not that he's not okay as a voice actor, because I do like his work in The Road to El Dorado. I just don't, I'm not into it. But anyway.
Yeah. I'm having a hard time for him in particular, divorcing how I feel about the portrayal and performance from how I feel about the character, which comes mostly from how I feel about the character in the novel, which was drastically transformed.
Yeah. He is a lot different than he is in the book. But one of the things, Victor Hugo was big on money, and while Notre Dame de Paris was like this ode to, you know, the edifice and was this plea for protecting historical landmarks, he revised the book into an opera, La Esmeralda, and a lot of things he changed himself. So he made Captain Phoebus a good guy. Esmeralda lived instead of dying. And because of censorship, they forced him to remove all references to Frollo being a cleric. So, so that's something.
So that goes back to the opera. Interesting.
So it's a really long-standing thing. So it's not all Disney. A lot of it is Victor Hugo himself.
Which makes, I guess, Disney's choices more understandable, and just makes me then sad about Victor Hugo, like, bowdlerizing his own novel.
He did it a lot. He revised, I think there are a few revised versions of it. But anyway, we can talk about that more as we go along if you want.
Yeah. The first section, the enumeratio, is the recap section. So just as a kind of very brief orienting recap, basically it is the story of a orphaned hunchback young man who is raised in the Cathedral of Notre Dame as a bell ringer, and whose life is then changed when he meets a beautiful gypsy/Romani woman, Esmeralda. The story is framed as being told by the puppeteer Clopin, and begins with the events basically right when Quasimodo, the main character, is very young. So we see a group of Romani who are trying to sneak into Paris in 1482 and are caught by Judge Claude Frollo. So I'm going to go ahead and complain about this one now. In the book, he is a cleric. He is the archdeacon of Notre Dame. And every single thing about his character would make a million times more sense if he were a cleric.
I don't know. I kind of feel like, as a priest, if his aim is the eradication of Romani people, it makes more sense that he's a lawmaker than a cleric to me, because as a cleric, his influence is not as far-reaching. Like, he can influence the minds of the people, but the physical getting rid of them aspect, I don't think is something that would be within a priest's grasp. Yeah, this corrupt lawmaker, I think, is... I don't mind it as a choice, and I think is even more relevant now as a narrative than it may even have been when it was first made.
I'll talk more about, I guess, the kind of general choice of how this whole narrative is put forward, and that does, come from Victor Hugo as well, but there are some historical issues with it. I guess for me, it's just that, like, So much of in particular, there's such a heavy emphasis on like religious hypocrisy in ways that I feel like don't work as well with somebody who is just like technically a regular dude, and it's all about how like his lust is so damaging, and it's like, dude, just get married.
Yeah, exactly. That is one thing. I was literally watching and I'm like, why is this dude single?
Right.
Just
like
get married.
you're allowed to get married.
It's
You're just a
fine.
judge.
He's like, oh, well, just never found the right girl, I suppose. And it's like, dude, just fucking get married. It's fine. You're allowed.
You don't have vows. So that for me is the big thing. And there's a couple other things that I'll kind of mention later that also I think would work better if he was a man of the church.
For sure.
He chases and then kind of semi-accidentally kills one of the Romani women on the steps of Notre Dame, and then sees that she has this like bundle that he assumes is stolen goods, but then turns out it's a baby, but that the baby is visibly deformed in some way, and so he promptly tries to throw the child into a well.
Ugh.
Great guy.
Yeah, such a champion, hero of the people.
Uh-huh. Yeah, at which point the archdeacon, the person who has the job that Frollo has in the book, comes out, tells him off, and basically says that in penance he has to agree to like raise the child, and by which he says, okay, cool, so I'm just going to leave him here in the cathedral.
Yeah, he has to live in the cathedral.
Right, which also would make more sense if he was actually formally associated with the cathedral in some way.
Yeah, instead of just like local lawman say like appropriating property, like put him here. That's fine. The archdeacon is played by David Ogden Stiers, a big guy at Disney at the time. He played Governor Ratcliffe in Pocahontas. He played Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast. He played Winchester in MASH, for any MASH fans. R.I.P. David Ogden Stiers. He was amazing. And he's got such a good voice.
Yeah, and his part of the song is very good here. And he also definitely is... he's like the nice cleric in the model, not too dissimilar from the bishop in Les Miserables.
I was literally about to say that. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So he definitely is like a recognizable type of like somebody who would show up in Hugo's writings.
Do you find it insane that Clopin knows about Quasimodo? Like, not just that there's like a legend of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, like this mysterious bell ringer, but he knows the circumstances under which he entered the city and knows his name later. Right. Like later in the movie during the Festival of Fools, when he's revealed, Clopin's like, Quasimodo, the bell ringer of Notre Dame. It's like, how do you know him?
In terms of like the beginning, I assume that he's telling the story like after everything in the movie has happened.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But like during the movie, I'm like, wait, what? How?
Right.
Why?
And also I don't understand how he would know the story. Like, who told him? Because
Yes.
Quasimodo doesn't know it. Frollo's dead. Like, did the archdeacon just, like, pop up and was like, by the way?
Yeah, like, and how, I mean, like, maybe he was around while the events were taking place, but, like, how old is Clopin supposed to be? I don't know.
Right.
He doesn't look
right.
old.
I mean, could it, like, because it could be implied, I guess, that he was, like, with that group of people at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then, like, was able to put two and two together. But he seems young for that.
Yeah, I'd say he's in his 30s. I mean, how do you tell whether a cartoon is old? I guess. But...
a cartoon in a mask, too.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
Frollo also does name him Quasimodo, which means half-formed, basically.
Brutal.
Solid parenting, solid adoptive parenting here.
It's like Frollo is the most evil Disney villain. Like, literally, there's no... He's evil to the point where it's just completely unnecessary, like, beyond his desire to eradicate the Romani people. Like... Yeah, naming a child Quasimodo is fucked.
Right. And also we find out that, so this guy who murdered Quasimodo's mother then tells him, oh yeah, no, your mom abandoned you.
Or was like gonna try and kill you or something. Oh yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, that like your mother like abandoned you. Was, like,
you.
Going,
that like, classic narrative that like ethnic minorities are like less responsible parents than white people, which is so insidious.
Yes, yes. And also, yeah, another way in which this movie is upsettingly relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's 20 years later. We meet Quasimodo, who's, a 20-ish-year-old young man now. He lives in the bell tower of the cathedral. He's very nice. He, for some reason, really likes Claude Frollo, which is utterly inexplicable, but I guess he doesn't know anybody else. So,
Yeah, and I
and also
mean,
Stockholm
he's
Syndrome.
been indoctrinated like since he was a baby that like he was his savior. Basically,
Yeah,
it's a bit of the old Stockholm syndrome, I guess.
yeah.
Wait, who took care of Quasimodo when he was a baby? What the
That's such a
fuck?
good question.
I just was like, wait, because he's like live in the bell tower, like. I was thinking through this whole movie, like how drafty it is up there, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you would have been so cold all the time. Like, how did he live as a baby? Was the archdeacon just caring for him? What?
Right. Like it's just so like I mean that like definitely just adds to like this is the problem of Frollo not having this like real association in Egypt
With
with the
the
cathedral and just kind of
church.
comes and goes is that it's like the archdeacon's like you have to raise his kid and he's like cool and by that I mean I'm going to leave him in your church and sometimes show up and like look at him and like teach him the alphabet but he's doing that when this guy is like 20 so
Yeah,
like what has he been
it's
doing the last
so
20
crazy.
years?
And like the fact that it's like this fucked puritanical alphabet
Oh
is
my god,
so
it's so
funny
awful.
to me. Quasimodo has his gargoyle friends.
Yes, he does this with gargoyle friends who are named Laverne, Victor, and Hugo.
I love that they're Victor and Hugo and then just
I know.
Laverne. Like, we'll call it Laverne, I guess.
Who
Okay. Doesn't
apparently is it's a singer.
a singer?
Yes, I was looking this up, and there's a singer who Laverne is named after.
A French singer?
I kind of think no. I think it's like a group. I want to say it's like a group of three women, and like one of them is named like something Laverne.
I will have to look that up. I have no idea.
Yeah,
I just think
I
it's
didn't write
so
it down.
incongruous with Victor Hugo. Like,
Right.
call her, like, I don't know, Fontaine or Eponine or something, like some
Right.
other Victor Hugo homage.
Yeah, and apparently also, if I'm trying to remember, but the original names that they had in mind for the gargoyles were also, I think they were people like to be it was going to be named after people who had played Quasimodo in like the stage adaptation, I guess.
Hmm.
Which I think would have been really interesting, and I think they, if I'm remembering correctly, they dropped it because of concerns about there being like litigation issues
Huh. That's
from
weird.
those people.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
But Victor
this
and
is just
Hugo
based on
works.
Wikipedia, but
Victor and Hugo works. I
yeah.
hate them though. I really hate them. I hate Jason Alexander in this movie.
Yeah, they're definitely your like classic Disney sidekick, but like not as good
Yeah,
as
no,
most of your classic Disney sidekicks.
they kind of caught lightning in a bottle with Robin Williams, and
Mm-hmm.
they just kept trying to chase that same comedian as a sidekick thing. It didn't work with Danny
Yeah,
DeVito in Hercules. It was not great with Eddie Murphy in Mulan. Didn't work
yeah,
with Jason Alexander in this. It's just no good. And yeah, I mean, and this is like a whole issue with the whole movie. Like the fact that Demi Moore is Esmeralda is
yeah.
insane. Like not only that she is a white woman playing a woman of color, but Demi Moore's voice is not distinct in any way. She's literally just
Right.
there because she is famous, which is
Yeah,
such a huge bugbear of mine with famous people being given voice acting work when they're not voice
yeah.
actors. It makes me
Right.
fucking furious. Like,
Especially for things that like ask for singing in particular.
well, she doesn't sing. That's the thing.
Right.
Like, they could have picked anyone else. Like, because Tom Hulse does his own singing, like, and he's
Right. I
got
mean,
an
he's like a Tony
okay.
nominated musical theater actor.
Yeah, like I don't like his voice personally. I think it has too much vibrato. I'm not into it, but at least he could sing. I'm on board with it.
Right.
Demi Moore, like, what are you bringing to this? Fucking
Yeah.
nothing. Like, just stay in your lane. And that's the issue because with animation, Robin Williams was really the missing link. He was a
Mm-hmm.
talented voice actor and he was a famous person. So
Yeah.
he sort of created this thing at Disney where they felt like they should have big name actors doing voice work to get people into the theaters even when they didn't have voice talent, which is how you end up now with bloody Katy Perry voicing Smurfette, even though her voice could be best described as generic woman. It doesn't make sense. It makes me so angry. And I'm going to stop my rant there because it just...
No, but it is like, it's very silly.
Yeah.
So they do this. I just want to say also, by the way, about the alphabet, that the bit where it's like D is damnation and then E is eternal damnation cracked me the fuck up.
Yeah, that's really funny. Abomination, blasphemy, contrition. Funny.
Contrition, one of the many words that children do not know.
Yeah, no, it's well, any of them. Abomination, blasphemy, like... Yeah, I don't even know how you would begin to explain what an abomination is to a child. It's so nuanced.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Quasimodo then accidentally says F for festival, because today is the day of the Feast of Fools, so this festival that he can see happening down below, and that he kind of wants to sneak out and go to, and then Frollo is like, oh no, but you could never do that, because people will just mock you for your deformity and hate you, and it'll be awful.
Oh, poor Quasimodo.
I know, which is sad. He then sings a song, which is clearly just part of your world.
Yeah, it's the classic Disney trope, the I Want song, which is the song that every Disney hero sings to identify what they want. And for Ariel, it's part of their world. For Belle, it's the opening number where she says there must be more than this provincial life.
Right.
And it's out there, which I don't mind. I don't hate it. I like it.
Fine.
I don't think that the songs in this are that memorable. Like, there were a few songs in this when I was watching it yesterday that I was like, I completely forgot this existed. But this one, I don't mind it.
Yeah. I like the opening song, but like the bells of Notre Dame.
I like that.
Yeah.
It does set the scene well. It is a good. The score is good. The score is really good.
And and I don't think any of the songs are awful, just a number of them are unmemorable.
Forgettable. Like the one that the gargoyles sing later in the movie is just
Right. Yeah, that's actually, I think, one of the songs that I like, the only song that I actually kind of actively dislike, but that's like content as much as anything else.
Yeah.
Phoebus arrives from the war. Which war? I don't know. I'm pretty sure actually France wasn't in a war in 1502. If I'm wrong, correct me, but I spent a while digging around and could not figure out which war this was supposed to be.
It was the war. The war.
Because at first I was like, I couldn't remember exactly what date it was. So when I was first watching the movie, I was like, oh, would it make sense for this to be the 100 Years' War? But no, it's too late because by now it's supposed to be like 1502. So I don't know. I don't know what the war is.
It's the war. How could we have forgotten the war? Unbelievable.
The war.
There's some guards that are manhandling Esmeralda, and Phoebus steps in and sort of rescues them.
He's got a horse sidekick.
Yeah, who's called Achilles. Which leads to the amazing joke where he says, Achilles, heal. And we're all supposed to laugh at that. I noticed last night when I was putting this on Disney Plus, the only warning that it gives, it says like tobacco usage. And I was like, tobacco usage? And then I look and like the goat that Esmeralda has, Charlie, he smokes a pipe like all the time. Like, why is this goat smoking a pipe? It's insane.
That's a good question.
No one
but
else.
Also, like, that's the only warning they give for this. I feel like there's a lot of warnings I would have given for this.
Yeah, exactly right. But no, the smoking goat is what the kids will emulate. Insane.
It's a big, big concern.
Not a single other Romani person is seen smoking a pipe or, no one has a cigar. But yeah.
It's just the goat.
Goat with a pipe.
Goat with a pipe. He helps Esmeralda escape and then meets Frollo, who's in the process of torturing people.
He's
Another thing.
He's torturing the last captain of the guard.
Right, yes.
And he's like giving tips. He's giving tips to the torturer, like, don't lash him too quickly because the pain of the last lash dulls him to the next. You must leave time. It's like, Frollo, you are so evil.
Yes.
Why?
It's just like so like creepy and sadistic. And also, yeah, it's like that is something that I feel like there should have been a warning for. Reference to
Absolutely.
torture.
But, like, can we take a moment to appreciate what a massive fucking power play it is to have Phoebus, his new captain of the guard, rendezvous with him in the catacombs of the Castle of Justice, where he's torturing the former captain of the guard? What
It
a
is
baller!
nothing. Like, he is nothing if not confident and intelligent.
He is
like
very confident.
He's a good villain. So, and he informs Phoebus that his main job, which Phoebus is definitely like, you brought me back from a war for this, is to root out the gypsies and, like, in particular, find their hideout, the Court of Miracles.
Yeah, exactly right. He does this very disturbing metaphor with ants where he just destroys. He kills ants. He just smushes ants with his fingers, which I found very viscerally upsetting. I don't like it. I was like, bleh.
And then, like, brings a stone down to kill the rest of them. And Phoebus is like, got it.
Yeah, what a great and not at all heavy-handed metaphor, Frollo. Well done.
Again, another warning that could have been given, references to genocide.
Yeah. The systematic destruction of a people, warning, and tobacco use.
Tobacco use is the only real problem here.
And now it's the Festival of Fools.
Yes, so everybody's dancing and having a good time, except for Frollo, who is obligated to go and watch it, and is sitting there just, like, being a real dour fuck in his tent.
Yeah, he's got his little marquee and he's just like, I don't enjoy this.
Until he really enjoys it and gets, like, upsettingly turned on by Esmeralda dancing.
Yeah, so the Festival of Fools, it's all this, like, they sing this song called Topsy Turvy because there's all these people. It's about, I guess, originally... Oh, you're probably going to talk about it, like what the original point of the Festival of Fools was. But the idea of it was basically reversing people's stations, like a bottoms-up sort of situation. So there's, like, a man dressed as a lobster pushing a man in a giant cauldron, and
there are dogs walking people.
And, like, everyone else, every other, like, topsy-turvy thing is people in costumes, like, acting out reversed roles. But the dogs are real dogs.
They're
and it's
actual dogs.
Do you spend the whole year before the Festival of Fools just teaching your dog to walk you? Like, what was this? How?
I don't think I could train my dog to do that.
Absolutely not. And Quasimodo has, like, he's there. He's escaped from Notre Dame. He snuck out and he keeps getting into mischief as Clopin sings. And eventually he meets Esmeralda.
Yeah, so he sort of, like, falls into her tent by accident. She sees him and is very nice to him, but then as she's leaving, she says, great mask. So she thinks that his face is a mask as opposed to his real face. Yeah, Esmeralda does, like, her dancing on what is legit a stripper pole.
Yeah, she...
Again, a choice in this children's movie.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, the over-sexualization of these, like... Disney princesses who are not white. I mean, she's not a Disney princess, but, like, you know, Jasmine is a similar sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It's insane. And this culminates. She does this very sexy dance. She has, like, this scarf and she kind of, like, wraps it around Frollo's neck and is dancing up on him. And he's like, like, he's into it. And it culminates in her stealing a guard's spear as she sticks it into the stage and then just, like, pole dances on it. And I was like, my God, like, it's unbelievable.
Right? Like, why did they think this is a good idea?
Yeah, it's insane. It's really insane. Yeah, and, like, she's really objectified. Like, Frollo's like, look at that disgusting display, and Phoebus is like, yes, sir. Oh, with his tongue
and I
hanging
mean, and
out.
Frollo's saying that, but also clearly as, like, salivating.
Yeah, exactly
at the
right.
same time.
Yeah. Frollo's whole deal in this, aside from being, like, an evil fucking monster, is just a really good allegory for how men sometimes despise the objects of their desire. That's his whole thing.
Yeah. And again, I guess that's the other part that I was saying, like, I feel like would have made much more sense had he been a cleric, because there's nothing wrong, there's nothing wrong exactly with having sexual desire
Mm-hmm.
as essentially as an unmarried man who is just associated solely with like secular power.
Yeah, exactly. There's none of that. There's none of that vows of chastity and that sort of thing. There's no
Yeah.
reason for him to abstain from sexual desire. It's all very healthy. Like,
Right. I mean, not that like the Catholic Church is like the best on like sex,
no, it's not.
but it does like he could just get married. I
Yeah,
mean, maybe like not to her because there's, class stuff, but like he's presented as this like man who has this like uncontrollable lust but like no avenue for it. And it's like, but you could have an avenue for it because at
yes,
any time you could get married.
yeah,
And could probably
literally.
even get married to a much younger woman.
Or like, I don't
Like,
know, use the services of a brothel or whatever. Like,
right.
there's avenues. Like, for even men who cannot attract a woman with their charm and looks. I mean, his haircut is a choice. Like,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
But like he doesn't need to attract like even to get married, like he's
A man of means.
yeah, he's very powerful. He's presumably wealthy. Like he could easily make like as a political like a like marriage, he could very easily get somebody to like marry off their young daughter to him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was thinking as well, isn't it so weird? Like, there's a lot of Romani people in this scene. Like, they
Yeah.
live in Paris. Like, they're around. It is so strange. Not only the choice to have Esmeralda be a person of color and have Demi Moore be white, but none of the other Romani people are people of color. They're all sort of like
Right.
ambiguously ethnic. Like, oh, what could they be? They're kind of swarthy. They've all got dark hair, but they're all white. And it's like, so why?
Right.
Why is
Including of course
Esmeralda?
Quasimodo, who is
Yeah,
who is very pale.
yeah, he's a redhead. Like,
Yeah.
what is going on? Like, why did they make Esmeralda like black? I don't know why. Like,
Right.
representation, absolutely, but
Right.
there should be more people of color, if anything, and they should be voiced
Right.
by people of color. I just don't.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, the one like medieval justification for it is that I would say probably in the 15th century, the Romani are like probably like there probably really are a kind of multi-ethnic group as
mm-hmm.
opposed to like a kind of like a unified ethnicity. Like I don't think they necessarily like would have all been of the same
Well,
skin
that's what I
tone.
think. But like, does like Esmeralda not have any family? Like is she just like
Right, like they
a
could
unit
still
of
have a lot
one in
more.
this
Yeah.
Romani community? Like, there's because like it's like all the Romani except Esmeralda are like one ethnically ambiguous collective,
Yeah.
and then she's just another entity entirely.
Right. It's like there's like all the like slightly swarthy people, and then there's Esmeralda who's portrayed as black, and then Quasimodo who's portrayed as like he looks like he's Irish.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of Romani is he? Anyway, they want to crown the king. The person with the
The
ugliest
King of
face
Fools.
gets crowned the king of fools.
Yes, and Quasimodo wins, obviously.
Yeah, Esmeralda tries to take his mask off and realizes it isn't a mask. Like, oops, my bad. But yeah, this is the part that I was talking about earlier when Clapart is like, it's Quasimodo, the bell ringer. Like, I knew all along. Dude, what are you doing?
Right, like does everybody just know about this? Like, and how? Because nobody's ever seen him? Like, do people
They
see him
talk about
wandering around the
him
cathedral?
like,
Like,
well, I mean, later in the scene with the God help the outcast scene, and Quasimodo like wanders down into the church to listen to Esmeralda sing. One of the guys is like, "You bell ringer, get back up to your tower!" Like, they all know his deal. Like, stay out of our
right.
way. We know who you are. Get out of here. It's so strange. And like,
Right.
Clapin knowing Quasimodo, like, wouldn't you want to protect him? Like, he's lived this sheltered life. Have you ever seen him
Yeah.
outside of the cathedral before? What are you doing?
Clopin's like this weird, like chaotic, neutral character.
He's not a good guy. He is
Right,
not.
that he's sort of like cast in some ways as like, well, he's like not on the same side as Frollo, so there's like an implicit he's not one of the bad guys, but he's also like just seemed like he really does just seem to do everything for like the sake of chaos.
I think he's a bad guy, and I'm going to talk about my issues with Disney's portrayal of them in a
That's
little
fair.
bit, but it makes me so
That's
fucking
very
angry.
fair.
Anyway, everyone starts throwing tomatoes at Quasimodo for some reason. the guards throw it, they all just start abusing him. Classic mob mentality.
Yeah, and then they, like, attach these ropes to him, and, like, they look like they're gonna, like, kill him.
Yeah, if this had gone on, it definitely would have escalated to him probably being murdered in the town square. Like, and Quasimodo's like begging Frollo to help him, and Frollo's like, "No, you need to learn a lesson."
And Phoebus also asks for permission to help him, and Frollo's like, "No, I have to teach him a lesson."
Yeah, it's insane that that Phoebus takes as long to grow a backbone as it does, frankly. But then Esmeralda defies Frollo and frees Quasimodo, much to Frollo's chagrin.
Yes, and she also then kind of like jumps up on something and then does some magic trick where she disappears in a puff of smoke.
And he's like, witchcraft.
Yes, and is very angry, and then everybody chases her for a while.
They do this thing where she disguises herself as an old man because Charlie, her goat, sits on her shoulders and smokes his pipe, and she wears a cloak. She wears a cloak over the whole thing, so it looks like an old man with just a pipe. That tobacco, it sure is helpful in evading the popo.
Right.
Yeah, and Esmeralda draws this comparison between Frollo's complicence in the abuse of Quasimodo to the plight of her people, and she demands justice, which just incenses Frollo even more because he sees himself as a good guy for deigning to permit Quasimodo to live.
Yeah. Such a good guy. Mm-hmm. What a nice guy. He's just a really nice guy. Why won't women date him?
Yeah, he's totally, and like Chad's like Phoebus.
That is kind of the plot of this movie, actually.
It kind of is. Frollo is a confirmed incel.
Right. And Quasimodo's like a nice incel. But
he definitely, his arc is basically learning to accept that women don't owe him a relationship and that he can just value them for their friendships, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So Esmeralda...
Oh, she ends up in the church. And Phoebus tells her, like, demand sanctuary so they can't take you. And, then, like, and she's like, what? And he just kind of turns around. He's like, nope, she said sanctuary. And the Archdeacon then, sticks up for her on that and says, Frollo has long since learned to respect the sanctity of the church.
Mm-hmm. But then Charlie, forces Phoebus to leave the cathedral after Esmeralda and Phoebus have a bit of a flirty back and forth.
I appreciate that Jolly is not on board with this budding romance, and
Absolutely.
I agree with him.
I wanted to puke when Phoebus is like, my name's Phoebus. It means sun god. I was like, fuck off, dude.
Fuck off.
I'm kind of a big deal in my shining gold armor, if you haven't noticed.
Who introduces himself like that?
Yeah, no. Blech. It's like, I don't go around like, my name's Sarah. It means princess.
Right.
So you better treat me as such. So Phoebus is escorted from the chapel, and Frollo hides in the church and then comes up behind Esmeralda and pins her arm behind her back and smells her hair.
Oh God, it's so gross.
And she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I was just imagining a rope around his neck. And she's like, I know what you were imagining. And it's like, what is this Disney movie?
Right, it's so this is not creepy. A movie for children.
Yeah, he's such a gross, creepy predator. I'm just like, bleh.
And again, things that there should have been warnings for. I don't care about the tobacco use. How about warnings for sexual predation?
Yeah, absolutely. And then Frollo reminds Esmeralda that she can claim sanctuary in Notre Dame, but she is trapped there. And he says that Romani people don't do well inside walls, which is, I mean, it feels like a gross stereotype, but Esmeralda is 100% like, yeah, no, I can't live in a building. And it's like, okay.
I mean, at the very least it correctly applies to her, but it is, kind of gross. Like, here is, I know what you are going to do, person who I have not met because of this ethnic stereotype. And then it is actually kind of worse that then the ethnic stereotype is portrayed as being 100% true.
Exactly right. Then she sings God Help the Outcasts. The CGI in this movie was used to great effect. Some of the crowd scenes are done in CGI, which looks kind of gross. Like the CGI people I'm not into. But like some of the shots of Esmeralda with the CGI candles flickering and stuff, it's very beautiful. The beautiful stained glass windows in the church. It's really good. The aesthetics of this movie are just top notch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll talk more about these specific like works of art that we get to see later. We also get to see a bit of the congregation who, as they come in, talk about things that they're praying for. And it's interesting because they are presented all as basically praying for personal gain in some regard.
Yeah, exactly. And Esmeralda sets herself apart by, she says, I don't need anything. Just help my people, please. She cares so much about the plight of the Romani people.
I do want to shout out, though, the one, like, this one, like, 80-year-old woman. She's like, I'm asking for a love. And I'm like, good for you.
You know, lady, there is an eligible judge who is single. And he's a bit younger than you, but, like, it wouldn't be completely inappropriate.
Come on, have some fun. He's clearly feeling lustful these days.
Might I interest you in a Frollo in the hay, as they
Oh dear.
Sorry, I love puns, and they're always so bad. I'm not good at puns. I love them, but I'm not good at them. Quasimodo comes downstairs to hear Esmeralda's beautiful singing. And a guy's like, you, bell ringer, get out of here. And he runs back up to his little room upstairs, and Esmeralda chases him up there.
Yeah, and she gets to see, he has all these, we've seen them before. I'm not actually sure what they're supposed to be made out of. Are they wood? But that he has all of these like little figurines that he's been carving.
Yeah, we see him carving one later in the movie. So they're little wooden carvings representing all the villages.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's not one for every villager. Like, he's got, like, a blacksmith, he's got one for the baker, but there's also all these generic people. And because there's not many of them, I really kind of want to know why he chose to carve those people specifically, and whether he has this, like, creepy obsession with certain people that he sees on a regular basis, that he's just watching them like, yes.
Kind of wondering about, like, how he can see them well enough that I think she even says, like, this is a good likeness. And, like, I've been at the top of Notre Dame. You cannot make out people's facial features.
I know. Throughout this whole movie, there's, like, we're told time and time again, like, the gargoyles can see the action in the square. Quasimodo can see what's going on down there. Like, it doesn't make any sense. The thing is massive. Yeah. You would not be able to see the people like that.
You can see, like, vague movement.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they look like little ants. They're not, like, you can't be like, yes, this is the baker. I recognize him.
Yeah.
No good.
Like, I remember trying to pick out my own mother from the top of Notre Dame and not being able to.
All right, so that myth is officially busted. Esmeralda just lets Charlie eat a bunch of Quasimodo's carvings?
Yes! And I'm like, that must have taken hours!
I know. I'm like, what the fuck, lady? What's your goat?
Like 10 of them.
He eats one, and I'm like, that's unbelievable. And then he keeps eating them. Like, what the fuck?
Like, you need to leash your goat, lady.
The one of the weird running jokes that starts now is that Hugo the gargoyle is attracted to Charlie the goat.
Right.
Like, whenever other people around, the gargoyles turn into just proper stone gargoyles.
Yeah.
But like, Hugo comes back to life to make a kissy face at Charlie. And later on, he draws a picture of Charlie. And
yeah, so it's where they're all, like, drawing pictures where they're like, ooh. And, like, I can't remember which one's which, but, like, one of them draws, like, a picture that's supposed to be Esmeralda, but is very bad. One of them draws a picture that's of Esmeralda, but that is actually pretty good. And then Hugo just draws a picture of the goat.
I noticed that, like, Victor, the posh gargoyle, he draws the, like, childlike drawing of Esmeralda. Laverne, the woman gargoyle, she draws a picture of Esmeralda that not only is very good, but the pose she's in is like, draw me like one of your French girls pose.
Yes.
And I'm like, Laverne, you horn dog, what are you doing?
Queer representation.
Exactly. Yeah, if Victor and Hugo were my only options, I would probably be into ladies too, frankly.
Fair.
I can't, I'm not above like crass humor, but Hugo, Jason Alexander's character in this movie is just so needlessly gross. Like,
yeah.
I don't like him. He's gross. Yeah.
This is definitely the moment when Laverne is like, my bisexuality has taken a hard gay turn.
Totally. So it's this point where Quasimodo talks about how he has to stay up here now. He's never going back out there because he's a monster. And she's like, you're not a monster. Like, Frollo's told you this, but you're not. And she says, do you think I'm a monster? He's like, no, you're good and kind. But, you know, the other gypsies, they're the ones. They're bad. Frollo's told me. And she's like, well, you're not a monster. And I am a gypsy. I'm not different than all other gypsies. So maybe Frollo's wrong about all of us, which has Quasimodo a little bit shook.
Yeah.
He's questioning everything he knows.
He's questioning the racism that was and self-hatred that was instilled in him.
Yeah. I mean, they don't really talk much about the fact that he is supposed to be Romani, but he is. I guess you forget because he's so blindingly white.
Right. Right, which is a very odd choice. Again, that like he is supposed to be Romani, but like he looks very different from all the other people who are portrayed as being Romani in the film.
Yeah. Can we just say as an aside, thank God, of all the changes that Disney, you know, made from the original source material, thank God they didn't go with Esmeralda's real origin story, which is that she is white but was kidnapped by Romani people and was raised by them and then later learns that she's just white. Thank God. Thank God they left that out and just decided to make her actually Romani. Whew.
Yeah, there's also the whole plot line that I always forget exactly how it turned out, but something to do with that, like, Frollo has a brother.
Yeah, Frollo has a brother. Oh, fuck.
Jahan?
Yeah, and in one of the, I think the 1923, I want to say, film adaptation, Frollo wasn't a cleric, but his brother was instead, and they did that. Yeah, but I don't remember anything about the brother.
Yeah, I think he was supposed to have been, like, licentious, like, dissipated one or something, and so, like, Frollo's, like, uptightness is in part this, like, contrast to his, like, shitty brother.
Interesting. That would be, I mean, I guess they didn't want to overcomplicate the story, but it would help to explain why he's like that.
Right.
So at this point, Quasimodo's like, I'll just carry you down the side of the church so that you can
And I guess
escape.
if he does that and, like, hides behind a statue and, like, looks at people, I guess if he can do that, then that explains why he knows what people look like.
No, because she says to him, have you ever done this before? And he's like, nope, let's go.
Oh. Okay, so never mind. There goes that explanation.
So yeah, she carries him down. It's supposed to be like a dramatic scene, and she's like, it's very reminiscent of like the scene in Tarzan where he's rescuing Jane from all the monkeys that are chasing them. That very skilled, capable man swinging through his natural environment while the woman screams and hangs on for dear life.
Gender parody.
Exactly. Esmeralda begs Quasimodo to leave the cathedral and come live with her in the Court of Miracles, and he says no, but she gives him like a mini dream catcher kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is so petty and nitpicky, but she says this little rhyme. She's like, remember, when you hold this woven band, you hold the city in your hand. It's not a woven band. It is a piece of string with a little dream catcher thing on it. And I'm like, they clearly had the rhyme written and they had like a different MacGuffin in mind, and then they changed it at the last minute and didn't bother to update the little poem that went with it. And I'm like, rude and sloppy.
It also doesn't really make any sense, to be honest, because the explanation is that so then that thing is like a map leading to the Court of Miracles.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way that with that precision they could do the like extremely winding streets of medieval Paris.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely ridiculous because like it's just a little like a pendant that you can hold in your hand sort of thing. And there's a big cross in the middle to symbolize where Notre Dame is for some reason. Like apparently the placement of Notre Dame has extreme significance to the Romani people. But when they get to like the cemetery or wherever the entrance to the Court of Miracles is located, Phoebus is like, now, this symbol that's on the map, it's here. And it's like, there's no room for any fucking symbols. Like this is... It's bullshit, truly.
Right. Or there's like, yeah, like that's the other thing on there is that there's like a tiny symbol. But based on that and the way the whole thing works, it also looks like it's like around the corner from Notre Dame because there's just like not enough room.
What a convenient location.
Right. Like how has Claude Frollo not just found it by like going door to door? In the like 4-block radius around the cathedral.
Anyone seen a lot of Romani people just mysteriously disappearing in thin air next door?
That's where they went. We then have Frollo struggling with his faith and his lust for Esmeralda in the song Hellfire, which does not belong in a children's movie.
It absolutely does not. Yeah, it's literally him wrestling with his inner demons about how much he wants to fuck Esmeralda. And he says, let her be mine or let her die, basically is his prayer.
It's me or your pyre. Choose me or your pyre.
Yeah, exactly. It's, I love this song. I love the music. It is so evil.
No, it's great.
I was so surprised last year when my husband and I went to Tokyo Disney. We saw one of the shows that they just have there. We saw, and Frollo was one of the bad guys that was in this like variety show. And I'm like, you never get to see this. And they had all those like those big hooded, like those red robed creatures that are in. They had them on stage. People who are
supposed to be like the Inquisition or something, just like hiding in the background.
They're so creepy. And like, yeah, they were at this show at Tokyo Disney. And I was like, that is so bizarre. Like, did they really love Hunchback in Japan? Why is this here? It was so rad.
That's great. And I do love also, so he's like sexy dancing with like Esmeralda made out of the flames.
Yeah.
And then I think he's like out later and he like must be like kind of like have like some soot or something. And he's like, oh, I had some trouble with the fireplace. And it's like, by which you mean you were like masturbating at it?
Yeah, it's such a good, it's really up there with the greatest villain songs in Disney history, but it is so incongruous with the tone of every other villain song where, you know, other villains sort of like revel in their evil or talk about how much they love to be bad guys or talk about their evil plans, and it's like an exposition song. But this is a song about a man wrestling with his inner demons of lust. Such heavy subject matter. And the thing is that Hellfire starts before Phoebus is briefly in the cathedral and wants to find Esmeralda, and like Quasimodo chases him out. But then Quasimodo sings a very brief song called Heaven's Light, which where he talks about Esmeralda and compares love to heaven's light, which is a very nice sentiment. But both songs are about Esmeralda, and it's like Quasimodo sort of has her up on a pedestal, and Frollo has this like Madonna whore thing happening where he's like, it's a very interesting.
Into, like, the devil in particular, like that he's like that he says something like that like it's basically like it's your fault, God, for making the devil so much stronger than a man.
Yeah, exactly. It's a
so
very
imputing his desire to like these demonic influences.
Yeah, it's a very stark contrast between the songs, and it's so out of place. It's so out of place in a kids movie, but it's such a good song as a standalone song. I'm really into it.
And I
Yeah.
also love the visuals, like the whole thing, like with like Esmeralda in the fireplace. Like it's way too sexy,
Yeah, it's
but it's
extremely
great.
sexy. It's like her, like it's the flames are like dancing and forming, her sort of like undulating in the fire.
And like
It's
the animation is
the animation
fantastic,
is
but
very, very legit. So that's basically his thing, and this leads to him systematically. He really steps up his efforts in eradicating the Romani people.
yes.
We get a bit of a montage.
Yeah, so he goes and finds her and offers a reward if they give her up. And I think he says first 10 pieces of silver and then goes up to 20. And I kind of feel like if they're going to go so heavy-handed with all the religious like hypocrisy metaphors that they really should have just done 30 pieces of silver and like went for it, and they did not. And I think
Gone
that's disappointing.
full Judas. No, they didn't. And obviously none of the other Romani people are willing to give up Esmeralda. They you see them pushing the caravans into the Seine, and with people still inside them. They like push the caravan in, and then like children are coming out of it. Like,
Yup.
like could people swim in those days? Like probably not,
Some
right?
people, I mean, some people could, but not everybody. And
Yeah,
also, like,
no.
if you're climbing out of a caravan into the river, like,
Yeah, that seems unlikely.
and you have like your clothes that are soaking wet, like even if you can swim, like,
Yeah, no, I
it's
don't
not the
like
best situation.
I don't like my chances of making it out of that. And then they like are interrogating the local miller, who apparently is accused of like just harboring Romani people.
I guess
And
maybe he like sold them bread one time, so why don't you know where Esmeralda is?
yeah, exactly. He's like, we found this gypsy talisman on your property. And he's like, our home is always open to people who are on the road. Like, man,
Yeah,
I'm trying
like
to
it's
make
clearly
money
just something
here.
that got put up as a like, we won't kill you if you try to stay in our house.
Yeah, exactly. And Frollo instructs Phoebus to burn down the miller's house with his family inside, and like
locked inside.
inside. Like he barricades the door with a spear so they can't get out. And like this is a man and a woman and a small child and a baby, just to really highlight the level of monstrosity at play here with Frollo. And
and so Phoebus refuses, which Frollo is very angry about. Frollo then sets the fire himself, which, by the way, is also something that I think would be better if he were a cleric, because there are like there's a whole set of rules essentially about like that churchmen are not supposed to like essentially be that active in the like destruction of human life, like in cases where people were burned at the stake, for example, like they're supposed to be handed over to the secular arm to do so. Like they're not supposed to light the pyres themselves. And so I feel like that would have been more interesting if it had been like him breaking his vows. Like,
yeah, that would have been interesting. Yeah, no, that I can appreciate that, and just like and I mean, even just on a more basic level, if you didn't have the understanding of like clerical vows, just the sort of ingrained cultural knowledge that we all have, that religious people are supposed to have just this deeply held views
respect
about
for human life.
Exactly. Thank you. I couldn't get the thought
In
out.
theory.
Yeah, just the implicit value on people's lives, and just being willing to throw that away while he single-mindedly pursues this one woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hell of a thing.
Yeah, so I think that would have added like a cool layer of complexity.
Well, I mean, I think it's really just, I guess it's just a matter of preference, because the fact that he is the law and he is burning people inside their houses, I don't think is any less
True, it's also not
powerful. Like it's like it's a bit of another pearl clutch moment, but yeah.
True.
Yeah, so Phoebus then rescues the miller's family from inside the house, and then they're gonna kill him.
Yeah. And they do manage to shoot him. He must be on like a borrowed horse from Frollo, because Frollo's like
Yeah, I love how Frollo, who doesn't seem to care about anyone or anything, is like, "Don't shoot my horse," as Venus is riding away on it.
Cares about the damn horse.
Yeah, like this is the one connection that he's made in the world. He like has this strong bond with his horse. Don't shoot it, please. Yeah, they managed to shoot Phoebus in the shoulder and he falls into the Seine from a great height.
And then at some point, like, somebody's like, should we go after him to make sure he's dead? And in, like, the typical, like, villain never finishing it off thing, Frollo's like, no, let him rot in his watery grave.
Yeah, it's like, dude, just do the double tap. Just make sure the job is done. You're so ineffectual, Frollo.
Just a James Bond villain.
Exactly. Esmeralda rescues him and takes him to Quasimodo in the cathedral, and Quasimodo's like, fuck, I guess I'll hide him.
Especially because this is right after the gargoyles sing this song to him, which is basically just like them getting his hopes up about how Esmeralda definitely wants to fuck him, and because he's more interesting looking, would definitely be more interested in him than she is in Phoebus, who's like boring and blonde.
Yeah, it's kind of cruel, but I do appreciate the rhyming of Adonis with your body is the shape a croissant is, which is barely a rhyme. And like, and
Slight
also
rhymes.
they go, because like Quasimodo, like, you know, he's supposed to be all deformed, so he's kind of like weird and sloping, and they literally have Hugo holding up a croissant, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess his body is kind of the shape of a croissant. Like, thanks for pointing it out. Like, at what point in the production, like, what, you know, is this a real chicken and the egg situation? Like, at what point was this comparison
did they go
drawn?
back and make him more croissant-like?
I'd like to put in this croissant line. Could you make him a little more croissanty? Like, 10% more croissanty, please, guys.
We just need this one song lyric to work, and the animators are like, really?
Frollo, meanwhile, like, after Phoebus dies, Frollo's like, I'm going to burn Paris down if that's what it takes to find Esmeralda. Paris is literally burning. Like, there's a big external shot from a distance, and there's just fires all over town, so much smoke. And it's like, this man is insane. He needs to be impeached.
They're also just like, okay, this is like the like logistic thing that this is not the only Disney movie that this happens in, because like I'm thinking like Lion King, where there's like everything is on fire and destroyed, and then in 2 minutes it's like, nope, he's king, the good guy's king now, so it's fine again. That this is very similar in that like you see Paris burning, you see this like fire in Notre Dame. We just had a fire in Notre Dame, like it's still not like fully restored. This would have had a major impact, but then as soon as, like, Frollo dies, sorry, spoiler for the end, they, like, come outside and it's like the sun is shining and, like, everything is totally fine.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's insane. Like, yeah, the extent of the fire damage that we see during the final fight scene, it's like, what? Where did it go? But also, like, what is burning? Because it's all cobblestones and stone.
Everything is... Like, all of the buildings, though, are timber, including even, like, a big stone building like Notre Dame. Like, they're, like, internally, like, the roof is going to be timber. Like, yeah, like, a ton of cathedrals and churches, even though they were, like, largely stone in terms of the part that people actually, like, see and look at and think about. There was, like, enough timber in the construction that, like, fires were a huge problem.
How interesting.
Yeah.
So, like,
this should have wrecked Paris.
Oh, man. I've never been so horny that I've destroyed a town, like, ever.
That I have destroyed, like, at this point, I think maybe the largest city in Western Europe?
We've all been there. Yeah, it's
basically,
it's up there. It's a big city to destroy with horniness.
Yeah.
So yeah, Esmeralda brings Phoebus to Quasimodo. Quasimodo does not like Phoebus because he's his sexual competition. But Esmeralda and Phoebus kiss, and Quasimodo, he like slumps against a pillar and he's so wounded. He's like, oh, my feelings. Cucked, he says. I've been cucked.
The one thing that I will say for Phoebus is that he has one good line here where I guess they're like using like a bottle like wine to like disinfect a wound. And he says something like 1475 Burgundy, not a good year. No. I'm like, all right, that's a good joke.
Yeah, it was decent. Esmeralda, so I wanted to know about this. So Esmeralda, she pours wine on this shoulder wound that Phoebus has and starts sewing him up with a needle. Is that something they would have done in those times? I was like, cleansing the wound in medieval times? Like,
Oh, yeah, like they actually knew more than we give them credit for.
Okay. All right.
In terms of like hygiene and like, especially because I would say, especially when you're talking about something like, this is like a woman doing medicine. So the people who actually like their medical knowledge is based on experience as opposed to the people whose medical knowledge is mostly based on like Greek books that have like the theory of the four humors and are wrong.
Yep.
That like the people who actually like practice medicine like figure a number of things out. So like they figure out things about like alcohol cleansing wounds.
How interesting. Yeah, because I saw that and I was like, I'm not sure. But luckily I knew I'd be able to ask you, so.
So yes, that's a decent amount of like practical things like that people definitely like had figured out just by like, oh, if I do this, they don't die.
I really like, so Esmeralda escapes because at the same time as this is all going on, Frollo realizes that the only way that Esmeralda could have escaped Notre Dame was if Quasimodo assisted her in some way. So he's coming to suss it out. At like, what time is it? He's like, dinner time.
Yes. He's like, I'm never too busy to share a meal with you, Quasimodo. And it's like, clearly you are, because you think it's like lunchtime and it's midnight.
But I really like, because Esmeralda and her, like, whoever helped bring Phoebus in, they just kind of lie Phoebus out on a bed, and they're like, don't let Frollo find Phoebus. And Quasimodo's like, okay, I won't. And he like drags him under a table and like kicks him under the table. He's just like, get
and it's clearly
there.
Is like, I'm doing like the letter of what you asked me to do, but I am not going to be nice to him about this.
Exactly. Like he kicks him so hard. It's amazing.
It's like, this is a like heavily injured man.
And he's just like,
I mean, she wouldn't know from the fact that he then like wanders the fuck all over Paris.
Exactly.
And like fights in a war with no apparent problem, but But
for now, he's weak. And he doesn't even make any like groaning noises as Quasimodo just like kicks him and he's like, get in there, you piece of shit. And Phoebus is just like deathly silent. Basically, Frollo just extracts from Quasimodo that he helped Esmeralda escape, and so Frollo is like, Paris is burning because of you. Gypsies aren't capable of real love. That was just one of her gypsy tricks. And he's like, oh, it's fucking brutal.
Yeah.
And he like destroys the little wooden carving that he's made of Esmeralda. He sets her on fire, which is sad.
Yeah. He also comes up with the like pretty clever trick of saying, oh, I definitely know where the Court of Miracles is, and I'm, like, about to attack it. Because then, of course, Quasimodo and Phoebus are like, oh my god, we have to go warn them, and take the little map, and obviously lead Frollo there.
Exactly right. Yeah, as soon as Frollo leaves, Phoebus is like, he's fine now. He's like, we've got to go.
Yep. Let's go.
Quasimodo doesn't want to, but he does to help Esmeralda, because he doesn't like Phoebus still. He hates Phoebus.
Right. Yeah, and they're sort of bickering, like, Phoebus is like, no, it's that way, and Quasimodo's like, I spend literally all of my time looking down at the city from above. I know how to follow this weird, like, map made out of string.
Seems legit. So this is the part that I have so many fucking problems with. The Court of Miracles, okay? So they find the Court of Miracles. It requires them to, like, slide away the top of like a sarcophagus and climb inside. It's like a hidden entryway.
Sure.
And as soon as they're in there, basically, they're set upon by all these Romani people and they're captured. And they start singing this song, The Court of Miracles. Bearing in mind that we just got done with Esmeralda being like, gypsies aren't the way Frollo says. Like, we're not bad people.
Right.
And then immediately this song, they're like, the lame can walk and the blind can see. And there's visuals there which are basically saying we pretend to be lame and blind to beg for money and cheat people out of money. So basically Disney is saying like, not all gypsies, but definitely these gypsies.
Right.
And
Or
it's
actually basically
horrible.
all gypsies except Esmeralda.
Yeah, exactly. And they've captured Phoebus and Quasimodo. They will not let them talk. And they're about to hang them based on nothing. And they're like,
Yeah.
they're like, these people, they're such savages. They have no judicial system. They'll just kill people for no
Right.
fucking reason. And not only that, but Clapin is the one who's orchestrating this execution. And he's like, everybody, we have some entertainment this evening. There's going to be a hanging. And
Yeah.
everyone's like, fuck yes, we love hanging. And it's like the
And he has this
fucking
mockery of a
hypocrisy.
trial thing where he
Yeah.
dresses up as as Frollo and then dresses up as the hangman.
Yeah. And it's just, it's insane that they want us to be like, oh, the Romani people in this movie are like the downtrodden minority and we're supposed to feel bad for them, but also they're just portrayed as these morally bankrupt savages who will kill people and who lie about being disabled to trick people out of money. Oh, it's so awful.
Which is a very traditional stereotype about the
About
Romani,
Romani
which is
people. Yeah,
not
exactly.
great to be buying into in this movie.
Exactly. And for them to be, yeah, it's unbelievable. You'd never get away with something like this these days. We've come
I really hope not.
No, you wouldn't. And we've come such a long way with things. I feel like the lesser known we've come a long way. I don't think we wouldn't have thought anything about calling people gypsies in 1996, but now we know that that's a slur and an inaccurate slur because it comes from the misbelief that they originated in Egypt, which they didn't.
Yeah.
They're from India, and things like, we don't call people Eskimos anymore because that is a slur as well. We've learned a lot in a relatively short period of time. I don't think you'd be able to do that now. I hope not. God, I hope not.
Yeah. No, I hope it would not be quite this bad, at least.
Yeah.
The goat is the only one who is portrayed as having morality. It's the goat sees that this is happening and the goat runs to tell Esmeralda.
Yeah.
The goat is portrayed as being more morally upstanding
than the entire Romani person.
Romani population.
The goat has an earring. Who pierces the ear of a goat?
That's a good question.
I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm like, why would you pierce a goat's ear? And it's like a big hoop. It's like pulling the earlobe down. I'm like, he needs a lighter hoop. He's just a goat.
Poor goat. And he's so small.
And he's addicted to nicotine. That's why he's so small. It stunts your growth.
Poor thing.
So Frollo storms the Court of Miracles. He's like, fiddle-dee-dee, I tricked you. I followed you here. You led me right where I wanted to go, you fucking idiots. And Quasimodo's like, I'm a fool.
And so then he obviously captures Esmeralda and goes straight to executing her for witchcraft. Zero trial. No. There is no trial.
No. Well, everyone saw it at the Festival of Fools. She disappeared. It's witchcraft.
Yep. Yeah. So no trial, which is wrong. There would have been a trial.
Yeah. You'd think.
And then basically says to her so you gonna fuck me? And then she's like, no. And then he's like, she refuses to recant. I guess I'll have to kill her.
It's so gross. She spits in his face, which I kind of like. I was like, yeah, go Esmeralda. But even now, she's still being sexualized, even as she's about to die. She's wearing her slip and it's strategically torn. When did this happen? Who tore her undergarments just enough?
Yeah. I also do just want to note that Esmeralda really is the only woman in this movie.
Yeah.
There are barely even background women in this movie.
Yeah. There's one little girl who kind of plays an important role, sort of, kinda, at the end. And I mean, I guess Laverne is a woman insofar as a gargoyle could be considered to have a gender.
Right, but which I feel is actually kind of questionable in terms of so it's okay, I mean, fine, I guess it's an actress playing her, so we can I guess we could assume that it's a female identifying gargoyle, although I don't know.
I don't know how gender works with gargoyles. I don't presume to
Yeah.
understand the complexities of gargoyle gender politics.
Right. I don't understand their gender politics, and they also definitely don't have genitals.
No, they don't.
Not that that determines gender, but
No, but also
it is worth noting.
Hugo like eats Quasimodo's food. Does he have like a digestive system? Like I have so
That's a
many
very good
questions about like, and like later in the movie, Victor is using Hugo as like a bellows to stoke like the fire that's in Notre Dame, and it's like, does he have lungs? I want to know.
I mean, there is an argument to be made that they are actually all a figment of Quasimodo's imagination.
Well, I was thinking that too, right up to the point where they start actively participating in the defense of Notre Dame. And I was like,
that's true.
Well, this can't be a metaphor. But yeah, up to that point, for sure, they could be just a figment of his imagination because he's so fucking lonely.
Which is very sad.
Yeah. Frollo said to his guards, like, take Quasimodo back to Notre Dame and make sure he can't escape. So they've, like, chained him up like some sort of poor, like, King Kong sort of thing. He's got all these chains and he's shackled to these pillars. And it's, the gargoyles are trying to, like, futilely free him and he can't. And they're like, you have to try and save Esmeralda, and Quasimodo's kind of just given up on himself.
He's like, no, I tried before and I just fucked up.
Yeah, exactly. But then as he sees Esmeralda's life starting to slip away as she inhales the smoke from the pyre, he breaks his chains, which, holy fuck, he must be really strong.
Yeah, and that I think is in the book too, is that he's portrayed as being like extremely strong, because I think like he basically does nothing but like ringing the bells itself, but like you have to be actually pretty strong to ring the bells. I mean, because essentially you're like pulling like massive iron objects.
I think Victor Hugo had a thing for like inhumanly strong people, because it was the same thing. No, seriously, because you got Quasimodo, but Jean Valjean, like the reason that Javert discovers who he is because he pulls the cart off that guy, and he's like, there's only one man in Paris who's as strong as that. It's Jean Valjean.
Right, yeah. Or Quasimodo. Yeah, so it is definitely sort of the same. But that is in the book too. And so he breaks the chains and then like Tarzan swings down.
I know, it makes no sense. What is the rope attached to? We've got a real Spider-Man problem here. Like what, where... But and he like rips the ropes off Esmeralda with one hand. Like, where was this strength before, Quasimodo? Could you not have just like, come on? Yeah, and then he climbs back up to the top of the bell tower, and he's like,
also like holding her in one hand.
Yeah, it like King Kong climbing up the side of the New York State building, Empire State, not New York State. Sorry, Empire State Building. And Sanctuary. I remember being a little kid and being so intrigued by the idea of Sanctuary, like the idea that you could just go and hide out in a church. Yeah, like why don't more people do that?
Thing. Like, and like I find it kind of cool that like the plot of like I find it kind of cool that there is this like children's movie that like turns on this sort of like weird pre-modern judicial concept.
Yeah, I mean like Sanctuary is not a thing now, is it?
It can't possibly be.
No, it can't be. Because everyone would just be like flocking to churches.
Right. No, it certainly can't be like in countries that are officially like secular countries.
No, certainly. No. It's definitely a whole it's a thing from when church and state were more closely like intertwined.
Right.
Yeah, no.
I don't know exactly when that went away, but
I'll have to do some further reading. But yeah, it's really, I remember as a kid just being very intrigued by this idea that you could take refuge in a church.
Yeah.
Frollo tells his guards to attack Notre Dame, basically.
Yep.
It's this attack on this iconic edifice of Paris that makes the people finally realize that Frollo's not a good dude, and Phoebus rallies the people to revolt against Frollo because now he attacks Notre Dame herself. And I guess because Notre Dame means what, like our woman, it's named after Our like Lady. the Virgin Mary. Yeah. So it's kind of it's not only that he's attacking Paris, but he's attacking their faith, really, because this is
Yeah, like he's attacking
representative of
the
the...
Virgin Mary.
Yeah, essentially.
Which actually totally like makes sense as a rhetorical move in a like late medieval context, that it would be portrayed as this like attack on the Virgin Mary by attacking the cathedral. And I feel like that actually works really well.
I
And
agree.
you see that earlier too with like at the beginning where the archdeacon's like, dude, you just murdered this woman. And he says like beneath the very eyes of Notre Dame, and it's like referring to the church, but it's also kind of referring to the Virgin Mary.
Yeah, and the statues of the kings of Israel that are in the cathedral. Yeah, those creepy CGI statues,
which are so cool. I love them.
Yeah, they're really cool. The CGI in this is just superb, and we see a lot of that in this fight scene now. Like, there's a lot of sweeping vistas.
Yeah.
Now we have the big final fight scene where Quasimodo and the gargoyles defend Notre Dame against the onslaught of Frollo and his guards. Why? Okay, one of the big things in this is that there is a molten cauldron of metal that Quasimodo tips over the side. Why the fuck is that there? What for?
Right. I feel like it's implied that it like is like for like bell casting, but like I'm pretty sure that would not like happen just like in the rafters of the cathedral.
Yeah,
like just
surely
all the
not.
time.
Like if the cathedral's made of wood, why would you have molten metal up there? That doesn't...
It seems like not a great idea.
No.
Yeah, especially because like that part in particular, like he is actually precisely in the part that is like all wood.
Exactly. It's crazy. I was like, why is that? And just like the logistics, like how long it would take to heat the metal using medieval like technology to the point that it was molten. Like, they didn't know this battle was going to happen.
Right, and it's also like, what is it up there for? Because like, so Quasimodo's the only person who hangs out there. Like, he's clearly the bell ringer. Like,
Not
are they
the
saying
bell
he's also
caster?
like the bell caster?
He
like
makes the bells? It's insane.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
This whole battle scene is one of my massive problems with the whole movie. This whole movie doesn't know what it wants to be. It's neither one thing nor the other. And this fight scene is just the perfect example, because you have these very, this battle where they're passionately trying to save Notre Dame and save Esmeralda. But then you have guards falling off Notre Dame, and instead of like the Wilhelm scream, they've got the Bill Farmer goofy scream. They're like, ooh, right. And I'm like, what? And then there's more like dramatic fighting, and Phoebus is like sword fighting and shit. And then Jason Alexander like chews up like a brick or something and fires it out of his mouth like a machine gun. And it's just this gritty fighting juxtaposed with these joke bits, and it's just it's insane. The tonal whiplash in this bit, it's terrible.
Yeah. We do, however, get to see like the fire come. So like, so gargoyles are functional for any listeners who are not aware that that is a difference between a gargoyle and a grotesque. A grotesque is just decorative, whereas a gargoyle is functional, and that it's basically like a rain spout.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we see like instead like now it's a hot lava spout, which I'm like, that would like I feel like, I don't know how stone works. I'm not a construction person. I feel like that would like destroy everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he basically just tips this giant cauldron over, like not over the edge, like on the floor, and it runs out over the floor and out of these gargoyles. And it's a beautiful
like the defense
visual.
of Notre Dame would have wrecked Notre Dame.
Exactly. They really destroyed it in defending it. Yeah, it's crazy. The soldiers seem to be all defeated, but Frollo manages to sneak inside, and he finds Quasimodo weeping over Esmeralda's body because he thinks she's dead. And Quasimodo's like, well, Frollo comes in and he's like, she died because of you, basically.
It's like, thanks, dude. Like, fuck off.
Yeah, and he's like, but don't worry, your pain will soon be at an end. And Quasimodo sees, like, Frollo's shadow with a dagger about to... Like, why kill Quasimodo? Like, to what end, Frollo?
Right? Like, what's he gonna do? Like...
Just to really just put the cherry on top of the evil sundae that is his life. he's like, well, I might as well kill the bell ringer. Like, who's going to do it for you, Frollo? Like, someone has to ring the bells. You lack of foresight on Frollo's part, I feel. But yeah, Quasimodo's like, you're the monster. The only monster here is you. You've made me think that I was unlovable and a monster, and I'm not. Like, I can be loved. She loved me and I loved her. But then Esmeralda is like alive, and then he has to carry her off and stop Frollo killing her again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so they have like an additional big fight, and then like at some point, and which, by the way, Frollo then reveals like, oh, also, by the way, I've been lying the whole time about your mother. Like, this reminds me about like how like it was like this very like Lion King-esque, like, this reminds me of how your mother was when she was trying to save you like a chump or something.
Yeah, exactly. And Frollo and Quasimodo's like, what? No. And it's like, Frollo, you fucking idiot. You should have known that revealing this lifelong lie would give him the final burst of strength he need to fucking kill you.
Right. And it's also very this like ironic, like that Frollo like piously says, God shall smite the wicked and plunge them into the fiery pit, and then like the thing he's standing on breaks and he gets plunged into said fiery pit.
Yeah, there's a bit of like, I don't know, is it magic realism or what? Like he's hanging on for dear life onto this gargoyle, and it's got like the face of a panther or something. And it comes to life and like roars in his face, and he's like, bah! And then the gargoyle breaks off, and they both fall into the flames below, and they died.
Which is very much also a like very clearly supposed to be like the flames of hell.
Yeah, it's literal flames, but symbolic of the flames of hell. Very popular death in Beauty and the Beast, falling to your death.
Mm-hmm.
Happens in Beauty and the Beast, happens in Tarzan. I don't know what else happens in this. Yeah.
The Lion King, there's like the dramatic, like he falls, but then I guess the hyenas eat him.
Yeah, and like in Tarzan, he falls and kind of like gets hung with vines.
Yeah.
But yeah, it happens in a bunch of them. Falling deaths, because basically, I guess the idea is that if someone falls to their death, it's not the fault of the protagonist, and you can still like them because they haven't caused a death.
Or at the very least, like, even if they kind of do, you don't have to, like, reckon with it mentally in the same way as you do, like, watching somebody stab somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, Quasimodo briefly is trying to save Frollo because they're all kind of dangling off the building. Yeah, so, like, even to the last, Quasimodo is trying to save this person who was so awful to him. Yeah. And they won.
Yeah, they won, and also everybody likes Quasimodo now. Some child runs up and hugs him.
Yeah, he, like, it's a weird, because, yeah, they lead him outside, like, how did you feel about the bit where Quasimodo, like, takes Phoebus and Esmeralda's hands and, like, joins their hands together? Like, I am granting a dispensation over your relationship.
And it's like, what right do you have to do this?
Yeah, exactly. Like, we were never going to ask your permission anyway, but okay. But yeah, they get him outside, and this little girl, she like comes up and she like touches his face, and then Quasimodo like hugs her. Like, she's not accepting you, she's touching your face. But we're supposed to take this as like, they like him now. Hooray.
Hooray. Yeah. I guess, like, he'll be fine now. And also, I guess, like, Esmeralda and Phoebus will, like, get married. I don't know.
Oh, they do. In the sequel, they have a child. And,
oh, God, kill
and
me.
Quasimodo gets a hot girlfriend. So he's not single forever. Hooray!
The gargoyles must be so happy.
They're pumped.
Does the one gargoyle ever get to date the goat?
I don't remember. God, I hope so. It's not good. It's not good.
Like fire, hellfire, this fire in my skin, this burning desire is turning me to sin.
So, we've already hinted at some things already, but the next section, the Vera et Falso, is where I'll discuss what they got right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, at first, just like, because of this end, I just want to note that this is really not the end in the book. Like, really not the end in the book. where Phoebus sucks. Phoebus actively on purpose betrays Esmeralda because he doesn't actually like care about, like, he like thinks she's hot, but he doesn't actually give a shit about her.
Mm-mm.
And so like I actually like hate him being like a good guy and and like the like positive love interest. Like I just think I just hate it. I really hate it.
Well, in La Esmeralda, Phoebus dies, but he dies for love. So, I mean, again, his character got retconned by Victor Hugo. It's the problem is the Hunchback of Notre Dame has been adapted and adapted and readapted so many times that you can't do a straight adaptation from novel to movie
True.
without taking into account the influence that all the previous adaptations have had on the public consciousness.
True.
I don't think that people would have accepted a new version that was as close to the book, because so much has already been done with the source material.
Right. And especially for like, this is a Disney movie, like I feel like they have to give it something that is a happy ending.
Yeah, I think there's that element as well. I think it's not the whole reason, but it's definitely part of the reason. I think at this point, when you have a story that's been told and retold so many times, the originality isn't in the story itself. The originality is in the aesthetics of the movie and how they present the cathedral and the visuals of that, and the music. Those are the truly original parts, because the story is something we already know. And it's the same as like, I mean, a lot of the movies they take on, like The Princess and the Frog, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, these are all stories that humans have been telling each other for centuries. The original part is the aesthetics and the music. That's what Disney does.
Yeah, which is fair.
And the other thing to bear in mind is that Notre Dame, as we know it today, is we owe so much to Victor Hugo, because he brought this landmark to the public consciousness and, helped put a lot of this preservation in place for landmarks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the novel was trying to address a problem that doesn't exist anymore. Like, we don't have to be convinced to value historical landmarks anymore. So the purpose of the novel doesn't need to be included in the movie, because it's not a problem we face.
Right. And I will say already, like, so I'll, in the next section, I'll talk a little bit more about, like, particularly, like, the way that Notre Dame is portrayed and things along those lines.
Yes,
like,
please.
I do actually think that, like, the movie is also kind of in a similar way, like, has something of that vibe of being, like, a love story to Notre Dame. Like, I definitely, like, had these moments where I, like, cried just like looking at Notre Dame in this movie.
It's so beautiful. The CGI, they were really getting a hang of it at this point, and it's just it's real good. It's real good.
Yeah. So that's Phoebus. The other thing I'll say that's wrong about Phoebus, although this of course is, Victor Hugo's fault as well, is that there was nobody in the 15th century named Phoebus.
No, absolutely not.
Like, like, come the fuck on. Your name's like Christopher.
Maybe he just tells everyone his name was Phoebus.
I'm named Phoebus after the sun god.
It means sun god.
But yeah, it's like, fuck dude, that's not your fucking name. There's also, so the other thing that like does not quite ring true is, to be honest, actually the entire baseline plot about the Romani. Because so the 15th century is still a period where like the Romani like the late 15th, early 16th century is still a period where the Romani in France are like actually kind of fine. Like they're not actually they're not actually targeted in this way until about the 17th century. And
how interesting.
So it's like very much centered on this like constellation of like ethnic stereotypes and attitudes and prejudices that I would say actually are probably more relevant for Victor Hugo's own time and relatively recent past than they are in like when the novel and movie ostensibly take place.
How interesting.
Yeah. It drove me absolutely mad in the Feast of Fools that they kept talking about it as like a peasant festival, and they keep talking about the peasants, and that they essentially don't make a distinction between peasants and the urban poor. Which is wrong. Like, the word peasant doesn't just mean, like, poor person. It has a meaning. It refers to people who have, like, a particular, like, relationship with the land, which means, like, they are people living in more rural areas. Like, the Parisian urban poor aren't peasants.
So the peasants would be more people who like are governed by the lord of that particular area and they work for him sort of thing.
Yeah, like there'd be people who like work the land. Some amount of them are like some of them would be free peasants, which means that like they technically could leave. Others would be serfs, which means that like they kind of couldn't and would be subject to a different kind of constellation of restrictions. But it is a category which essentially is referring to like a rural population,
Not a
and
city
which is also a
dwelling
population
population.
that's more socioeconomically diverse. That like there are basically wealthy peasants.
How interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, so yeah, here it's basically just like we're using peasant to mean like generic poor person.
That's cool.
So yeah, so that really bothered me. There's also, I would say, kind of some amount of things that they get right and some amount that they get wrong about the Feast of Fools. So this is a real thing. I don't understand why they changed the date.
What date was it supposed to be? I didn't...
So they refer to it in the movie as being on January 6th. I don't know why they go out of their way to say this when it's wrong.
Because the January the 6th is already a thing. Like, January the 6th is the day... I don't know what this is called in the Catholic Church. I know it's a thing, but my family's from Argentina, so the 6th is what we call Reyes Day, which is the day that the three wise men they reached the stable. So that's like... I think that's already a feast day in its own right. Like, probably not a...
Yeah, it's the Feast of the Epiphany.
Yeah, the Epiphany. That's what it's called. I'm not... Sorry. I went to Catholic school and I know so little. Like, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know that I went to Catholic school. But yeah, so they've
and I'm just like a Jew who knows all of these Catholic things now because of being a medievalist. So.
Well, yeah. So... Yeah, so they've like gotten rid of like an existing feast day and replaced it with a feast day that already had its own day. That's so weird.
Right. Yeah. So like that's weird, especially also because it's on January 1st, and the reason it's on January 1st, and the feast that it's associated with is the feast of the circumcision of Christ. I get why they don't want to start talking about the circumcision of Christ in this movie. But they could have just said it was on January 1st and not like gotten into the circumcision of Christ.
Yeah, no, probably. Yeah, not something that needed to be covered.
Although I do just want to remind everyone, I've definitely mentioned this in previous episodes, but I do just want to make sure everybody listening to this is aware of the fact that Christ's circumcision was recognized to the extent that there were relics of Christ's foreskin. There were a couple of different medieval churches that claimed to have Jesus's foreskin.
Man, relics are such a trip. I
love relics.
Yeah, I love the idea of them. Like, Catholicism in general, I guess it has this certain, because my family's Mormon, so all I know about Catholicism is from when I went to school, and there's so many things like relics and saints that they seem so exotic to me, because I'm like, wow, saints, we didn't have anything like that. That's rad.
Yeah, and St. Catherine of Siena had a vision in which she married Jesus using his foreskin as the ring.
Oh my God! All right, I'm gonna have to do some more reading about that.
Cocktail party fact.
With this ring, I thee wed. Oh my God! Oh, that is so gross. I'm just imagining it like one of my dog's dehydrated treats that are like kind of jerky-like. It's so gross.
I mean, I've definitely seen relics that have that like jerky like look.
That is so gross. All right, I'm gonna have to read about
like
that
saint later. Saint Anthony looks kind of jerky like.
Imagine, like, it's so hard. It's so hard these days. When Mary MacKillop, who was Australian, when she was canonized, it was this massive deal because it is so hard in this modern day to sort of convincingly prove that they did miracles, that there were miracles so that you can canonize a person in modern times. The fact that there are saints out there who married God, who married Jesus and used his foreskin as a ring is insane.
Glory days of the Catholic Church. And listen, like, I'm Jewish, so I didn't grow up with this at all, obviously.
Yeah.
And then just, like, learned all this stuff, like, for being a medieval historian. And I was like, this is so cool. Why can't we have this?
Yeah, I know. It's
great.
amazing. Oh, man. Okay, please tell me more facts. I'm loving this.
Yeah. So the other thing about the Feast of Fools is that for a lot of its history, it's presented here as being this like very transgressive thing, but it was transgressive mostly in a like symbolic sense, and was very actually like overtly incorporated into church liturgy, including that there would be like a like young person appointed as like a boy bishop who would like lead church services.
That's so strange. Yeah, because this is just seen as like April Fool's Day sort of thing, not as anything of any sort of significance. It's just like everything's crazy today. It's opposite day.
And and it's a little more like deliberately so, I guess, and like structured, and it is based officially on there's a biblical principle it's rooted in, that God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise, which is from 1 Corinthians, and it's like supposed to be a day like celebrating that. And so, as I said, like the ways in which it's topsy-turvy are very structured and very ultimately like controlled by the traditional hierarchy.
Yeah, it's controlled anarchy. Like it's craziness on a very prescribed level.
Yeah. It is, however, something that eventually they like decide is not the vibe that they want to go for. And this actually would be a period at which like it would no longer be such a major thing, because it basically like gets suppressed over the course of the 15th century. With in particular in 1445, the Faculty of Theology at the University of Paris like formally condemns it. So by this point, like it certainly wouldn't have been like quite this major of a festival, is my understanding.
Okay, all right.
Then there is the witchcraft accusation. So for once, actually, usually when there are witchcraft accusations in movies, I complain about them because they often put them in the 13th and 14th centuries when witch hunting was not actually a big thing. But we are finally getting to a point where it's like becoming more of a thing. And so, like, a witch accusation in the late 15th century makes sense in a way that one in the 13th century kind of doesn't.
Okay.
So I will give them that. And also that France is actually one of the places where burning was preferred to hanging for witches, which also is something that, like, usually in places where hanging is preferred, it's, like, still portrayed as burning, which is a common mistake. So here that actually is correct. The biggest problem with the whole witchcraft thing is that, like, there are trials. Like, there is a judicial system in the medieval world. And, like, in particular for, like, witchcraft and heresy, like, I'm not going to say it's, like, a fair trial entirely necessarily, but it is, like, a trial. Like, there is, like, procedure.
At least the illusion of justice, if not real justice.
Yeah, you don't just, like, plop her on a pyre and be like, do you recant and fuck me? And then she says no, and you're like, whoops, okay, we're good.
Do you recant and fuck me? Yeah, I guess, I mean, not to play devil's advocate, but I guess maybe the whole movie is kind of leading up to Frollo just literally going mad with power. So I don't know. I guess I could excuse the fact that they dispense with the trial just to give more context to the fact that Frollo just stopped giving a fuck. He was murdering people in their homes. He was burning Paris to the ground to single-mindedly pursue this one chick.
But that also raises a question of, like, he's not the only, like, official in Paris. Like,
That's
where's, like, the king of France?
Yeah, where are his compatriots? Like, there's no other judges in France.
Right, like, there should be, like, there is a massive, like, royal bureaucracy as well in Paris. Like, are they not noticing that this is happening?
Yeah, there's just there's a deleted scene somewhere. There's like 30 other judges, and they're all just somewhere else in the castle of justice, whatever. Like, no, that Frollo guy, he's a pretty cuckoo. You know, we don't fuck with him.
Right, and so it's just this bizarre, like, where is everyone? Like, Paris is on fire.
Yeah. And the king is just like, I'm going to the countryside, ta-ta.
I will say, though, I do like a lot of things about the portrayal of religion, in that I really like, I really like Hellfire, and I think it would work better if he were a cleric like he's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's like a really interesting like commentary on like religious hypocrisy and these like and like conflicts between like desire and vows or values or something. Like I think it is a really like interesting and like slightly more complicated portrayal of medieval Christianity than we often get.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I honestly,
Yeah.
up until I rewatched this movie, I would have sworn up and down that he was a priest. Like, I didn't realize that he wasn't until I watched it. And I was
Right.
like, oh, okay, that's fine, I
Right.
guess.
Because they kind of like make him not a priest, but they also keep in a lot of things that make more sense if he were a priest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and that does also like coexist with somebody like the Archdeacon, who is the person who is in this movie, the Archdeacon, who like does certainly have a kind of like different attitude toward things, and is like, I don't know, certain like cares about various things in terms of like the sanctity of the church and what that like and how that like manifests in terms of political power, which is to some extent like what sanctuary is. Like sanctuary is about like the strength of the church to some extent.
Yes.
And so like I really like that. I really like a lot of those details.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the stuff in terms of like the references to the Virgin Mary work really well. I also really like in that like Esmeralda's song that there seems to be in particular this kind of sense of like the Virgin Mary as this to some extent like crossover figure who is considered potentially accessible to people who are marginalized.
Mm-hmm.
And that maps on in really interesting ways to the fact that in the medieval world, the Virgin Mary is often portrayed as like having a certain attraction for Jews. Even while there's also like Jewish polemic, which is quite nasty about the Virgin Mary, there's also all of these stories, which are things like Jewish women deciding to like pray to the Virgin Mary in childbirth because like, fuck it at this point, you know, why the hell not?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, and like the Virgin Mary is having this ability that that like Jesus even doesn't necessarily have in terms of like being able to attract at least like women and children from the Jewish community and kind of like be like their like gateway drug into Christianity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That more nurturing womanly vibe that Jesus doesn't give off so much.
Right. The Latin that we hear in the background is accurate Latin and is real medieval hymns for the most part.
That's awesome.
Which is cool, yeah. And then finally, I feel like this overall does a pretty good job on art and material culture. We have good like views of Paris that actually look like medieval Paris and kind of make sense. We see the medieval Palais de Justice and the Sainte-Chapelle. And I think that's done well overall. The one area where I'd say that gets a little complicated is in terms of Notre Dame itself.
It's not my fault. If in God's plan, he made the devil so much stronger than a man.
The next section is the Historia et Veritas, where I talk about a kind of real event or phenomenon or something, and I'm going to talk about the building. I'm just going to talk about Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said already, like the visuals of it are stunning.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah, and there are a lot of glimpses of things that do date back to this period or earlier. So the cathedral itself is constructed between 1160 and 1260, and so a lot of obviously the kind of fabric of the building does date back to this point. We see the rose windows, and 3 of Notre Dame's famous rose windows date back to the 13th century. We also see a very brief glimpse, which I noticed for the first time actually on this watch, that as Esmeralda's walking around when she's singing, that you see a kind of brief glimpse of there's this gorgeous choir screen that's depicting scenes from the life of Christ, and you can kind of see that behind her. And there's all the kind of statuary on the outside. What we have there now is not original because they got wrecked in the French Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
But the one, like, what they had in the movie looked like it was definitely, like, an effort being made at, like, looking like the original. And the ones they have now, actually, on the outside are also clearly, like, they're supposed to look like the original, more or less.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was just thinking, I don't know if you know this, but in the French Revolution, all the eyes of Notre Dame that you see talked about throughout the movie, which are these like dudes with these creepy, stone eyeballs, and you're like,
Yes.
"Ugh." During the French Revolution, they're supposed to depict the 12 kings of Israel. But during the French Revolution, the people who ransacked Notre Dame thought they represented the French kings, so they cut off all their heads. So that's one of the things that got, because they just didn't know, which is so sad. It's like, no, they're not the kings of France. Please don't destroy them.
And also just like, I feel like kingship was sort of out of fashion in general.
Yeah,
so
no. It was, they weren't on board with kings at that point.
Yeah, and we do have a number of the severed heads did survive and can be seen in the Musée de Cluny in Paris. You can go a short walk from Notre Dame and go see the severed heads that used to be on Notre Dame.
This movie, I'm not a Francophile by any means, and I'm not really France is not on my list of places I'd like to go in the world. But this made me want to go check it out for the architecture, because I do appreciate nice architecture. And this, I was watching and I was like, maybe I should go check it out. This is like, yeah, I'm thinking about it.
I like Paris a lot. It's not my main. I don't go there for work purposes because my main research site is in and around Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I spend most of my time. But I've been to Paris for fun a few times, and I really like it as a city. And and the architecture is just like Notre Dame and the Sainte-Chapelle, I think are really just like some of the most gorgeous buildings in the world.
Yeah, I'm gonna think about it, because it was so beautiful. The CGI in this, I cannot overstate it. It's just so good. It's really good.
It is. It's excellent. The big thing I will say that shows up here that would not have actually been in the medieval Notre Dame is our gargoyle friends. Our gargoyle friends are all grotesques from the 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
So as we were saying before, Victor Hugo's novel basically was in part a tool to inspire people to give a shit about Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked, and since it worked, it then inspired this massive restoration overseen by Eugène Viollet-le-Duc, who is like the person to go to for medieval restorations in France in the mid to late 19th century.
Sorry, so are you saying that the gargoyles weren't characters in the original book?
Yeah, no, the gargoyles were not original characters. Shocking.
Unbelievable. How could Disney take such artistic license?
So, I don't care that the gargoyles weren't characters, but I do feel at least duty bound to point out that they are gargoyles that would not have existed visually in either the 15th, 16th century or in 1831 when the book was published.
Mm-hmm. The ones, what about the actual gargoyles on the side of the building? Are they accurate?
Yes, those looked right, and in a number of the ones the ones that we see on the building today are the originals, I believe. And also you can tell because they are functional. If you walk around, if you happen to be walking around Notre Dame in the rain, you can see they still work. That water will pour out of them.
That's cool. Because it's so weird that they have these gargoyles, not Victor Hugo and Laverne, but the actual gargoyles on the side of the building that briefly come to life before Frollo dies. It's they could have easily just had them as the sidekicks and not
right.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems I feel
so it's because they're not as cool looking, I guess.
No, they're not. I guess they're not, and I guess merchandising is a massive factor, and they had to think about what toys they were going to make. I remember, pretty sure Macca's had toys when I was a kid. From Hunchback, I had a couple of them. Just little plastic shitty.
And I do really like them. I really enjoy looking at them. It's one of the cool parts about actually getting to go up to the roof basically. And you can walk around on that area and you can see the grotesques up close, and it is really cool. It is really a cool experience, and they are very cool looking. So I understand why they went that direction, but they, it is worth noting, as I said, for my, historian killjoy moment.
No, I like it. I love picking things apart.
And I will say also, it's overall, it is like, I think it actually is a really good restoration. I sometimes like Viollet-le-Duc and I sometimes don't. His restoration of Carcassonne and the walls around Carcassonne is very much like him being like, I feel like this is what this should have looked like. Not maybe what it actually looked like, but what it should have looked like.
Yeah, wasn't he like criticized a lot for like giving things a gothic feel instead of just actually going with accuracy?
Yeah, so the part of his Notre Dame restoration which falls into that category is the spire, which is gorgeous and unfortunately like did not survive the recent fire. But my being an asshole after that fire was like, well, the spire is very nice, but it's only 19th century. Like, it's kind of new. And it definitely was him being like, I feel like this building should have had a spire.
Yeah, he's like, this needs a phallic symbol on it. Because, you know.
But for the most part, a lot of the restoration is very good. And I think, like, most of it is true to, like, things about what the building looked like. I actually think a lot of the statuary, he does a pretty good job. And also, like, he does a cool thing where he figured out that, like, so basically there were, like, changes made in, like, the positioning of windows. Basically in one of the renovations in, I think, the 13th century from the 12th century original. And he, in, like, one small part of the cathedral, like, put it back to the 12th century version, which I think is actually kind of a cool choice.
Yeah, that's nice. It's like, yeah, still paying homage to the original and preserving the subsequent renovations.
Yeah, so I think that's actually really, it was like a really interesting thing to do architecturally, and is like a cool way to be a kind of, to have like a creative restoration, but one that still ultimately kind of holds true to the building and its history.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm on board with Viollet-le-Duc and Notre Dame in a way that I'm not in some other places. That's my Notre Dame spiel. But just with the one other thing being just, as we said before, like, I do really like that, like, Notre Dame has such a presence in the film, because, like, the point of this novel to some extent really is Victor Hugo being like, we should care about Notre Dame.
Yeah, it's a love letter to Notre Dame.
And it's also really is just so central to certainly pre-modern urban identity. Like, the cathedral really is like the center of the city in a way that it, like, it almost actually makes sense to me that, like, if you're going to have a map and there's going to be like one thing on it, that it would be Notre Dame.
Oh, so you're on board with that weird little string
I'm
map.
actually kind of on board with it. Like, it might just have nothing, but if it's going to have one thing, it actually makes sense to me that it would be Notre Dame.
All right, I'll allow it.
It's so central to how people think about the city, and like that is the in the Middle Ages that would have been like the center of the city.
Like the first thing that they thought about when you settle a new city is where are people going to pray, sort of thing.
Right. And actually also, like, I think a number of them are like basically set like in the cities that are Roman cities, a lot of them, like the cathedrals, are basically like on top of what had been like the Roman city centers in a very deliberate way, because they then want that to be the focal point of urban identity.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely works. And like, it is like, I mean, I don't know, like for me, it's, I mean, I'm a medievalist, so obviously I'm biased, but it is for me very much like, that's what I think of when I think of Paris. Like, that's probably not normal. Most people probably think of like the Eiffel Tower, but.
Yeah, but it is iconic. Like, it's something that is known throughout the world. Yeah, it's not as iconic as the Eiffel Tower perhaps, but it's still very iconic.
Yeah. And as I said, I think that's one of the really good things about this film, is that it does, like, I think the depiction of Notre Dame is really fantastic.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. There's a lot of love and care shown with the depiction of Notre Dame itself.
Yeah.
Hellfire, dark fire, now gypsy, it's your turn. Choose me or your fire, be mine or you will burn.
For my next section, I ask both the guest and myself to come up with an alternative story, perhaps inspired by this one, in Fabula Nostra, or Our Story.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to go first?
Sure. I mean, look, I don't think it's a movie that warrants like a total tear down and being built up from the ground again. I think there's a lot in there that you want to keep. The CGI, again, I will say it again, is really fantastic. I would get rid of the CGI crowds. I don't think they look good. I think they're kind of ugly, and in some of the crowd shots you see these weird smooth faces that I'm just not on board with. I really think that if they wanted to approach this as a movie of significance in Disney's history, they had to make a choice about whether they were going to make it like a childish, funny thing, which obviously doesn't work with the source material, or they make it a movie that is more geared to older kids, like, you know, like High School Musical, not in tone, but like in that sort of age group, and just sort of resign yourself to the fact that it's going to be sad, and just say, you know, these kids need to learn about being sad eventually. Let's tell a nice story, softening some of the more gory details because they are still kids, but let's get rid of like the fart jokes and the getting hit in the dick jokes and all that shit. I just pick a tone
you don't need that.
and stick with it. And I think because of the source material, it has to be a more somber tone. Yeah, just make it a musical for older kids. Yeah. And that's that.
Yeah. I'd actually love to see, like, not instead of this, but in addition to this, I would love to see like an animated but adult movie of this, like, and one where actually, like, you know, I like preserve the original ending, like preserve the dark elements of the story, but the reason I still like want to do like the depressing adaptation but have it be animated is because I think it would be really cool to have potentially a way in which like they could like play with the animation style in a way to have more of it more kind of overtly inspired by medieval art.
Yes.
I don't know if have you seen The Secret of Kells?
No.
It's a good movie. It's also a beautiful movie, and that is a children's movie, but it's a kind of children's movie that's centered around basically the like production of the Book of Kells, and then like the animation style is clearly also inspired by the Book of Kells.
That's definitely something Disney has done in the past. They usually do it as sort of an introduction to the story, like we see in Beauty and the Beast, with the story being told with the stained glass sort of motif, or at the start of Coco when they tell the story of Coco's family but with the papel picada. Yeah, they definitely could have done that, like even if it's not a whole movie, but had like they could have told the story of Quasimodo and how he came to be in the bell tower. That whole bit with Clopin at the start could have been in that style, and that would have been a really nice addition.
So that I think that would have been really fun to have it be like, I don't know, like inspired by like 15th century illuminated manuscripts.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea. That's a really good idea, actually.
That's what I would want to do.
Yeah, no, they should. Yeah, no, those are good additions. I think more people of color just in general, like it's such a white movie. Like they sort of hint at some ethnicity that the Romani people have, but it's kind of like, you know, show us, please. Like they're just white people with black hair, and they're just like, imagine that they're ethnic. Boo.
Right. And it's a problem with a lot of medieval films in general that they tend to elide the reality of that, even in some place like northern France, like it was a much more diverse population than people tend to assume it was. And then it's like even more bizarre that you choose to make a central part of the movie like about the Romani, and then like just basically have them just like be white.
Yeah, no, the more diversity, please. Yeah, I would recast this with actual voice actors instead of big names. Tom Hulce can stay, I guess, even though I'm not super impressed with him overall, but I don't have a problem with him. Get rid of the comic sidekicks. If they're going to have talking gargoyles, less vulgar, please. Just all that.
I kind of want to not have the talking gargoyles, but have like different talking. I want to have the medieval statues actually talk. I want to have him have like weird conversations with like the Israelite kings.
Yeah, like in Hercules when the statue of Zeus comes to life to talk to Hercules. Yes, that would be so good. Like, what would you have done? That would be awesome. Or alternatively, something that could be used to great comic effect would have it be like Frollo imagines it, that Quasimodo just talks to these gargoyles and they don't talk back. And he just
Right.
insanely is rambling to these gargoyles. And, you know, they have weird facial expressions, so they could be like reaction shots of just what the gargoyles look like, but sort of frame it in a way that they're reacting to what he's saying. That would be great.
Yeah.
I think we've solved this movie.
Yeah, definitely.
It's perfect now.
Yeah. And then have the depressing ending where eventually they find like Quasimodo and Esmeralda's bones together.
I know, it's so gross that he just like crawls into her grave and dies. Oh my God.
And I will say, the one other thing that does bother me, on the one hand, like, it is a nice message that, like, the fact that you were nice doesn't mean that you, like, deserve, like, to be rewarded with a relationship.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if they're gonna, like, do, like, you know, make it a happy ending anyway, I kind of feel like it's kind of icky that they're like, okay, here's a character that we're going to, like, pretend is interesting and like have Esmeralda like get with him, because obviously like I know you said they did like remedying this in the sequel, but like obviously the hot girl can't get with like this like disabled deformed man. And it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems like ultimately this like actually though like traditional like Western beauty standards do matter, and like that is actually what defines why people get into a relationship.
On the one hand, I do agree with you, but on the other, I feel like getting the girl shouldn't be the goal. And I don't know if it's the right message you want to send to kids, that, you know, this sheltered loner's whole character arc is just him, you know, well, it's basically, if we have Quasimodo and Esmeralda getting together at the end, it basically reframes the whole movie as like a sexual competition between Quasimodo and Frollo, where they both want to fuck her, but Quasimodo's like the nice one. And that, I don't think, is much better of a message either. Esmeralda and Phoebus could just be friends. Everyone could just be friends.
That's true. I think it actually might be one of those things where like the best solution actually would have just been to like not have any romantic relationship result from this.
Yeah, absolutely. Quasimodo and Esmeralda would not work, but Phoebus and Esmeralda I'm not on board with either.
And especially like I don't think he has a personality, to be honest. So like
no, he doesn't. He's just good. And this is the thing, like it happens a lot in Disney movies that they have characters who their whole personality is just being good, and I'm not into it. Like the Cinderella remake had that issue. They're like, oh, Cinderella's so kind, that's her personality, she's kind. And it's like, but what else?
It's not a personality.
No, being kind isn't a personality. Like, give me something to fucking work with. No, not on board with Phoebus. He gives me strong fuckboy vibes.
And like I don't know, just like everything about him, like I'm just like and as I said, I'm sure this is influenced by the novel, but I'm just like, I don't believe that like you are going to like remain like a good partner and like loyal. I just like don't find it believable.
Yeah, like even if they're together at the end of the movie, does their relationship have legs? Does it have longevity? Absolutely not. It's
like I'm fine with Esmeralda like making out with Phoebus, like fair enough. But I feel like that's as far as it should go.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not buying that they're getting married and whatever. And like, what a betrayal of Esmeralda's character, that, you know, she's like, yes, I just so happen to be one of the Romani people that can't stand to be cooped up inside, but traditional marriage, yes, please. Like, I'm totally on board with that. I'm not like other girls, but like this, I am very much like other girls. It's a weird choice.
Right. Please give me a husband and like a white picket fence.
Yeah, exactly. Immediately.
God have mercy on earth. God have mercy on me. But she will be mine, or she will.
at this point, I think we can move on to our rating of the film on a scale of 1 to 5, based on whatever criteria you see fit.
Oh boy. I guess I give it like a 3. Like it's not terrible, but it's not great. It's not one that I keep coming back to in the Disney canon, but some of those songs are really good and the visuals are very pleasing. I would revisit it every few years.
Yeah.
Do you allow half points?
Yes.
All right, 3.5. I give it a solid 3.5. It's like a C+.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the same. I was thinking a 3.5. In Parks, I was actually kind of starting with a 3 and then basically decided it deserved an extra half point for being such a great portrayal, like, of Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, ultimately, honestly, like, in terms of the historical accuracy issues, like, I've found movies which are way worse than this. Which, like, honestly, like, for, like, a movie geared toward children, I feel like it is not the, like, most irresponsible portrayal of the late medieval world that I can imagine. First of all, thank you so much for coming on and talking about the Hunchback of Notre Dame with me.
Thank you. Are there any other Disney movies set in medieval times? I'd love to come back if you'll have me, because I love talking about Disney.
Yes, that would be great. There's a lot that are set in, like, vaguely medieval-ish times.
Yeah, like, you've already done
Aladdin?
Robin Hood. Aladdin is kind of medieval-ish.
So much as, like, vague legend, but, like, a lot of it, like, I mean, like, Sleeping Beauty, I feel like, and even maybe, like, Beauty and the Beast, I feel like are arguably, like, medieval-ish.
Yeah, they're medieval adjacent. They've got that flavor to them.
Yeah.
Totally.
I'd do some, like, random, like, medieval-ish Disney movie, and
yeah, if you'll have me back, I'd love to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will talk about Disney all day long. I have thoughts on everything.
Awesome. Yeah, actually, I should do Aladdin, actually. I actually have thoughts about Aladdin.
I have a lot of thoughts about Aladdin. I'll
Yes.
talk more about famous people doing voices.
Oh, yes. And also whitewashing.
Yeah, whitewashing, all that. Yeah, I had a really great time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. Where are places where the listeners could find you on the internet?
Well, I have a couple podcasts, so I will list them for you now. I do a podcast with my husband called Sarah and Michael Save Christmas, where we watch Christmas episodes of TV shows and sometimes movies. We also have another podcast that is a limited release called Jellicle Cast, where we watch the 2019 movie Cats 5 minutes at a time and talk about it in excruciating detail. The episodes are surprisingly long, considering we only talk about it 5 minutes at a time. And I also have another podcast that I do with my brother called Spurging Out, where we talk about how he has Asperger's and how his view on life, and we talk about things, we shoot the shit, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we have on our other brother who also has Asperger's. And it's an interesting dynamic because Julian, our baby brother, he's the most spurgy, we call it. And then Jeremy's less spurgy than that again. And then I have some spurgy tendencies, but I'm not diagnosed. And we have an interesting dynamic between the three of us. And that's fun as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all my stuff. And do you plug Instagrams and stuff?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, sure. If you'd like to see my art and stuff, I'm on Instagram at Sarah Bags Misk, MISC, and Bags is with 2 G's.
And you have an Etsy store too, right?
Yeah, I do. All the links are in the Instagram. You can have a look. It's been on holidays because of the COVID. The shipping's not so great at the moment. It's a bit unreliable, but we'll be getting back to it eventually.
One day there will be a normal world, maybe.
Fingers crossed.
Well, if you have enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe in your preferred podcatcher app and rate and review Media-eval on Apple Podcasts, and I will read new 5-star reviews in future episodes. I have not had any for a couple of weeks, so if you're listening, please feel inspired to write a review.
Mm-hmm.
Please also follow the podcast on Twitter at Media-eval and join our Facebook group. And you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Sarah Ifdecker. If you have any questions or suggestions, I would love to hear from you via email at media.evalpod@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Media-eval.